Hey guys, today I'm going to finally talk about my Halloscream role. Now that Halloscream is all over and we've been given the okay to share stuff on social media, I still can't tag myself as my character, so I'm assuming that means I can't really say, here's this character, this is me. I have to talk about it differently. So what I can show you is a character who bears an uncanny resemblance to me. Montage! Okay, so what I'm talking about today is not so much the character I played, rather the role that I played. So like the things that I did. Because my character didn't really have a name. I gave it a name in my head just in case anyone asked, but no one did, so I'll keep that to myself. As for my role, so I was in the Yokai maze. Now at Halloscream Sydney, like there was so much going on, but there were 3 main mazes in the big top, and I was in Yokai, which makes sense. I'm like half Japanese, so I just fit in really well there. But swing actor is what I was. I was a swing actor. What is a swing actor? Well, you know, when they were first giving out our roles and I'm opening the thing up and I'm like, swing actor. And there's 2 of us who are swing actors for Yokai. I'm like, what does that mean? Do we sit on a swing together? No, apparently not. So what we actually do, through the course of the night, right, the mazes were open from a little bit after 7, pretty much through to midnight. And so that's like 5 hours doing some pretty physical stuff, and actors need breaks, right? So dinner breaks, and you know, we'd already been there for before the maze even opens. You're getting makeup and costuming and doing warm-ups and so on. So, you know, people need breaks. Who gives them a break? How do you can't just leave like one position open or whatever. So what you have is swing actors, and we come in, we swing in, we take over while the actor's on break, and then we swing out and swing into the next one and send people on breaks. So what that means is I ended up playing 4 roles, essentially. Tricky thing is I only had 1 costume, so trying to take on 4 roles as this one character. Now, Yokai was a bit different to the other mazes. The other 2 mazes in our area, there was Ward 13 and Outlaw. Now, in them, the swing actors in Ward 13, you had a nurse swing actor who came in and swung for all the nurses, like, you know, evil, scary nurses, and then you had a patient character who would swing in to play all the different patients in there. Okay, easy enough. In Outlaw, you also had, like, a male outlaw and a female outlaw, and they would swing for all the other ones, and like there were some victim characters that I think the female outlaw would swing for. I don't know, I wasn't involved in those mazes, so that's all I know. But with Yokai was very different because each section of the maze was kind of self-contained. Yokai was like a museum of Japanese yokai, Japanese spirits, and, you know, mythology and so on. So there's all these different sections, I think 8 sections altogether, and they're all very different. So I played 4 very different roles wearing the 1 costume. So it was challenging. And I'm actually really quite flattered that they would give me a role like that and just assume that I have this versatility to play all these different things because, as most of you know, I'm actually more of a musician. I haven't really done any proper acting outside of like school and uni type stuff, and it's not something I've really pursued. So to be given that kind of demanding kind of thing, I was like, oh my god, thank you for believing in me. So yes, I was a swing actor. So when the time came, I think we did 2 rounds. So the first round of swinging I did was to send people on their dinner breaks for half an hour. And then there was a second round of swinging where it would be like a 15-minute rest break, I suppose. So I went in a sequence and did that twice. And like in between, I got my break. So the first role that I had to swing for was the host. Now the host of the Yokai Museum is welcoming everyone to the museum, you know, irashaimase, blah, 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 blah. And so that was probably the easiest one because I was wearing a kimono, and the host actor, she was also wearing kimono and like, you know, a headdress and stuff, which I didn't, but you know, it's the closest costume and closest character to what I was. So in that, you know, there wasn't as much Japanese because there were some things that we had planned that didn't end up happening. But yeah, no, say irashaimase, welcome people to the thing. I'm not going to say the lines because they might use them next year if it keeps going, if they keep Yokai around. So I wouldn't want to spoil that. But it's basically like, you know, here's the maze, you're going to see these things, and don't touch any of the actors, and because like this is you can't touch actors in this and the actors can't touch you. And what was the other rule is you have to stay together, because originally they were supposed to let in like 6 people at a time. It ended up bigger groups than that because there's just so many people coming. But yeah, so it was kind of like setting the mood and also giving them the rules and then sending them on their way and sort of helping time things so that hopefully the groups don't get too clumped in the maze. They still do get clumped. What can you do? So in that, I was sort of playing the more Japanese kind of lady, being a little bit scary. And then because one of the scares that we had planned for the initial thing, like it was very tech involved and they weren't able to get the tech done in time. So one of the things I did there is I'd be saying the speech, and one of the lines was like, you will experience and become part of those stories. So I'm like saying, oh yes, you're gonna see this, this, this. And then I would single someone out in the crowd and be like, you will become part of those stories, kind of thing. And that was always fun because they would sort of jump. So I played with that, I had a lot of fun. And the weird thing is like, so with hair, I didn't wear the wig. The wig was gonna be like this little bob thing, but I was just like, no, I'm gonna be more like the Ring and have on my hair just like that. And I would stand on a podium and people would come in, they would see me, and some of them didn't even think I was real because it was quite dark in there until I started moving. Then they'd be like, oh shit. But there were some people who were just absolutely terrified the moment they saw me, and I'm like, I haven't done anything. Plus, you know, I'm an actor, right? So that was kind of amusing. I had one girl come in with her group, take one look at me and immediately leave. Sometimes people in these mazes, they'll rearrange where they are in the line, but no, she just left and her friends were like, what are you doing? And she's like, gone. So that was amusing. And then there was another time where this entire group of like Asian kids came in, maybe not kids, they're probably a bit older than that, and they were just insane. Like, you know, they came in and the room is kind of round and they just stuck to the rice paper walls. And then when I moved, they freaked out. And then I had to stop them going through the rest of the maze yet because, you know, I've got to make sure the timing's right and say the speech and all that. I did eventually speed up the speech once we had too many people coming. Like, you know, you're trying to get people through a bit more quickly. But yeah, no, I had to stop them and that freaked them out. And then I sort of walked towards them to talk to them and they're like, I had to just like pull back and shorten the speech so much because they were going to go through that rice paper wall if I pushed it too much. So it was really interesting because that one, like, it's not the scariest thing. It's just you're introducing people to the maze. I did do like one bit of scary kind of thing and like interacting with people. But yeah, I was like, this isn't even the scary part. I haven't jumped out at you or anything. So I had a lot of fun with that part of the role. And that was the most like verbal, like I had heaps of lines to remember for that, and then sometimes had to change the lines to suit the situation and all that. So it was a real challenge in that sense, but I think I did pretty well, freaked out a lot of people, was convincing enough that when a whole group of Japanese people came in and I start off with irashaimase, they all said irashaimase back, and were I think a little bit surprised that I continued on in English. I can seem like I'm fluent in Japanese, but I'm actually not, so yeah. But yeah, no, it was a great time doing that. Then after that, once the actor came back, I would move on to, there's this sort of dual role where you do Maiden of Matsue and Okuri Inu. Maiden of Matsue was, so the story behind that, this is where we get into more of the stories. I mean, the host had a story as well, but that's a bit more of a modern one. Maiden of Matsue, there's like Matsue Castle, and she was buried under the castle as a, like sort of a sacrifice to say, please make this building stable. And so, but like they've kind of reinterpreted it for this where she's stuck in the walls, and so there's this stretch wall, and people coming down this corridor, they don't know that any of the walls are going to move, and then you go stretch through the thing, and I would scream through that. And it was a little bit difficult to get the timing right because all you have is a little peek hole and then you can see how many people are coming and you've got to try and figure out where they are because you can't see on the other side of the wall exactly where they are unless they're one of those people who bring torches in. So I'd try and get that, and yeah, a lot of the time I would scream at them if they need a little bit extra, and then I would sort of, through the stretch walls, all they can see is my hands, and then I would sort of like sink down, and then I would have to run to the other wall where I had another peephole, and that's where I had the drop box for Okuri Inu. Now, Okuri Inu, the guy who usually played that, had a sort of wolf mask. I did not have a wolf mask. And this is where the swing acting thing gets a bit challenging, because obviously I, in my costume, am not meant to be there. That was very difficult, but there was no way you could just suddenly like whack on a mask, because I had all this makeup as well, and you don't want to mess that up. It was tricky. So what I did, Dropbox is like where, you know, you walk in, like a thing drops down and someone pops out of like a little window thing. Yeah, so it's a bit of one of those jump scare things. So I would just go time my Dropbox. I didn't always time it to hit the first person, because often like the people who are least scared are at the front, and so the ones who are fun to scare tend to be in the middle. And sometimes the people at the front, you can hear them talking down the hallway. Oh, one of these pictures is gonna drop down and there'll be someone. So they're expecting it. And so if you let them go a little bit further past and then you drop the window, they think they're safe, but they're not. And then they're like, oh shit, what was that? So I had a bit of fun with that. And what I would do is, almost like the first day I experimented with some, you know, like some lines I came up with, but that didn't really work. I think it just confused people. So when I dropped the box, I'd drop it and then either do a death growl, or sometimes I would hiss at them and sort of like reach out like that. I'm surprised that I managed not to hit anyone as I was coming out, because you can't really see who's in front of you. But when the box drops, people tend to go, and then you can just go over the top of them like that, and then they freak out. And I had a good number of people fall over. You can actually see them there, not on the stretch wall. You can't see if they're falling over. I think a few people did. But yeah, no, mainly in the Dropbox. Rah! And yeah, and then they would go around the corner to the next thing and you just close up, reset, go to the other side. And that one was tricky because you're having people on two sides. And if they're not timed right, because some groups are really slow coming through the maze, and then the next group catches up to them and you get this stream of people. So you're trying to manage two sides at once. And I think in the first week, the Dropbox, we didn't have a latch yet. So the thing was always open. And yeah, I quickly figured out that to make sure people wouldn't walk past while I'm looking through the other people, I had to go peep hole, peep hole, peep hole, peep hole, to try and keep track of both the different things and see where people were. And I ended up prioritizing the Dropbox because obviously it's open if the latch wasn't there. You know, they could just go through the stretch wall. They don't even know that something's meant to be there. So it's okay if you don't scare them there, but coming through the Dropbox, you have to scare them there. So yeah, trying to manage those things was difficult. But that was a lot of fun, and then they would go around the corner to the freaky ring room and they would all stop there. So that was a little bit awkward when we didn't have the latch because they're all just standing there freaking out about the next room because they're so scared to go in. But yeah, hey, it worked out. And then after the Wolfman came back, and I would move on to Hanako-san. Hanako-san is a bathroom ghost in Japanese schools, so there's a lot of different mythologies around that. Some of them are like, you know, she was bullied and she killed herself in a high school bathroom. Another one is she was hiding out during the war in the 40s and a bomb dropped while she was hiding in the bathroom, and that's why she haunts the bathroom. So it kind of depends where you are in Japan, what the myth is. But it's usually she's on the third floor of the school and in the third bathroom stall. So they actually had a bathroom stall. The third bathroom stall in that room was closed, so you couldn't see what was in it. And yeah, the girl playing Hanako-san, she looked amazing. And yeah, so I would swap with her. And of course, now I'm in a bathroom, like, you know, she was dressed up like a schoolgirl. Now I'm in the bathroom wearing a kimono. And I'm like, yes, I am just a kimono ghost hanging out in the bathroom for some reason. So that was difficult. And it took me a while to figure out different ways to play that because there's a lot of spaces in there. You know, there's 3 open bathroom stalls and then the one that's closed in there. There's also a sink and a little space under that, but in the kimono it was a little bit hard I didn't even try to crouch down to hide under the sink. But when they first come in, there's a little wall, like there's the sink, there's wall, and you can sort of stand here. So there's 2 main things I figured out. Is a lot of the time I would hide in the 4th bathroom stall where they couldn't see me, and then I would come out and be like, rah, and freak them out that way. And that was pretty good originally. The first few days, especially, people would come in and be like, oh, this bathroom is so scary. It had Japanese graffiti all over it. Yeah, and then I would jump out and freak out some of them. a few people in there were a little bit annoying. Like there was one guy who was like, ooh, scary cultural appropriation. And I'm like, for one thing, I'm Japanese. For another thing, if that kind of stuff bothers you, maybe don't go into a maze called Yokai, like, you know, in an Australian theme park. But yeah, no, I'm Japanese, so I can wear a kimono if I like. Calm down. Also, I think anyone can wear kimono, so, you know, screw that whole cultural appropriation thing, but that's a tangent. No, I also had, like, I had some odd people come through. I had this huge line of people come through. I scared some of them, and while I was scaring the guys at the front, these two guys thought they were creeping up on me and tried to scare me as I turned around, and I'm like, I know you're there, and I'm also not going to break character, so I'm just like, whatever. But no, so I would usually stay in that fourth bathroom stall in the beginning, jump out and rah. Occasionally there'd be so many people piling up in there that they were stuck, so waiting to go into the next room. And that was difficult. So in the first, I think on the first night, I sung Genkotsu Yama no Tanuki-san, the Japanese kids thing, and that freaked out a few of them. And I tried it in clean singing and also growl singing. But I feel like I didn't really get enough of a reaction to justify that, so I found like jumping out going rah was good. But on the second week, I was trying to be more careful with my voice because there's like fog machines and they can kind of, you know, breathing in fog machines, it doesn't matter how good your technique is, sometimes it'll still irritate a bit and then you find your voice isn't lasting as long. So what I started to experiment with is I would hide in that little corner where they come out next to the sink, and so they would come out this way, not see me, just sort of hanging out here, and I was sort of like leaning against the thing, pretending to be kind of dead. And depending on what the crowd, like I could hear them coming, I could even feel in the ground where they were walking because there was like a plate and all that. So when they were coming around and, you know, what I could hear from the other room and then what they looked like, I would decide whether I would jump scare them or just like when they're coming through sort of reach out and pretend I'm like dead. And they actually freaked out at that. I was so surprised. Or if I'd like stay quiet or whatever. And then sometimes when they're going past, I would like pretend I would hold onto the sink and pretend I'm trying to follow them and trying to ask for help and all that kind of stuff. So I got to play with that a lot. It was difficult, you know, being in a bathroom in a kimono, and my kimono, the girl playing host had more of a yukata style, like thinner fabric and all that, so like probably easier to move in. Mine was a thicker kind of material and didn't breathe very well, so that was tricky. And it also looked like a bit more of a sort of fancy, like that sort of shiny black kind of stuff. And I'm like, how do I move in this? And you know, why am I in a bathroom as like this kind of ghost? I don't know, I had to like make up ideas in my head. But no, I got to experiment a lot with it and it was fun. And like once I really got into it, I had a lot of fun with that space, just trying different things. And then when Hanako-san came back, I would move to Kuchisake Ona's room. Kuchisake Ona is the slit mouth woman, so she has like the, you know, slit mouth. And what she does is, this is the mythology, she'd ask people, do you think I'm pretty? And if they said, and she's actually wearing a mask, so at this stage you can't see the thing, so in the myth. And so she'd be like, do you think I'm pretty? And if they said no, she'd kill them. If they said yes, she'd reveal her deformity and be like, what about now? And if they said yes, if they still said yes, you're pretty, she'd slice their face to match hers. And if they said no, death. So that's the mythology. There are ways to confuse Kuchisake Ona so that she doesn't know what to do or to distract her for a bit and then to escape. But you can look up all that stuff. With this one, Kuchisake Onna, so she was didn't have the mask, just had the makeup. The makeup was so cool. I love watching her get her makeup done. Kuchisake Onna. So in her room, there were two mannequins wearing a blue hooded cape kind of thing. And then Kuchisake herself was also wearing a cape. So for her, the scare, she could jump out from wherever, but she could also stand there and pretend to be a mannequin and then turn around and whatever. But I was in black kimono, so and no hoodie, so that wasn't an option for me. So what I did is when they come into the room, it's a mirror room, so it was like freaky hours. And you come in, there's the mannequins, and then there's like this wall at the end before they come in and go around to the next room. And yeah, so I would hide behind there, and in the mirror I could see when people were coming past the mannequins, and they all come into the room going, oh, one of these mannequins is going to turn around, guys, and they're like, is it this one? Is it this one? And then when they're looking at the second one, the first person in the line is looking at the last mannequin, that's when I jump out from behind the wall with the craziest death growl screaming kind of thing. Like, I probably overdid it with some of the vocals here. I would jump out, dodge back, scare the people in the middle, run around the mannequin, scare the people at the back, run around like a crazy person, all of this in a kimono, and yeah, freak the shit out of them. Like, even people who weren't so scared would be surprised by me jumping out because they were so convinced one of those mannequins would turn around, and then it's me who doesn't really fit in the space. It was a good fun. So yeah, I didn't even attempt to play any kind of kuchisake kind of character because it just didn't look like it. So it was all about like adapting myself to these roles and all that. So yeah, I had good fun with that. So those were the 4 roles that I played. And yeah, so it's like go from one to the other, to the other, to the other, have a break, go around and around and around and around and around. And then once everyone had their break, including me, I would go and join one of the actors to like help them out with scaring. And so what I would do is I would go to the Maiden of Matsue, Okuri Inu, because that's kind of like a 2-part role, and it's really hard to manage on your own if there's a lot of people coming through. So I would usually do the Maiden of Matsue because the guy playing the wolf, I mean, I figure like with my screaming kind of like, I did a high-pitched girly scream for there, and because she's meant to be a maiden, it makes more sense to me doing that. But occasionally, like, you know, if he was feeling a bit worn out at the end of the night, I would switch to the Inu. And we'd also like double team the wall, so you've got 4 hands reaching out at you, and yeah, that was heaps of fun. So yeah, I guess one of the things that you might realize from all this is that when you go through the maze, it's not going to be exactly the same experience every time, because depending on when you go, some of the actors might have switched and you might get me instead. And yeah, so that was kind of fun because on the first 2 days of Halloscream, it was a little bit less busy, so there were people who came through more than once. One of my friends brought his kid and they went through a gazillion times. They were the talk of the town. Everyone's like, who's this kid and the dad who keeps coming through? And the kid was scared every time, but he kept wanting to come back in. So I think they had a really great time, and yeah, we were able to give them something slightly different, even though they were doing it over and over and over. On the later nights, I think it was a little bit harder to get in because the queue was just so huge. So yeah, go early if you want to, you know, go around and around all the mazes. So yeah, had fun with that. Another part of my role, so in the second weekend, the first 2 nights we didn't do this. In the second weekend, so Halloween, the Friday, the Saturday, what they started doing with swing actors, because like, you know, we had about half an hour, about 7:30 is when the first break started. So we ended up doing a little bit of roaming. Now, to start off Halloscream Sydney, there was a thriller dance. I'm not sure, there are some videos floating out there. I'll see if I can find like a little clip somewhere and maybe direct you to it. I don't know how many are public though. Anyway, so we start off with this like introductory thing, and that's with like Satan summoning all this stuff, and yeah, there was like this little spot off to the side and they'd have their own dances. But then in the main park, at a certain point, Thriller would play, and then there's like that long bit where the guy's talking. We'd come out from around the corner, we'd all start coming forward, and then we'd all do the Thriller dance. So we had to learn that, and yes, I was doing Thriller in a kimono. Bit tricky, but hey, it was fun. So what they started doing is, after that, usually we would all run back and then go into our mazes, and then they would check that the mazes are all ready, and then they'd start letting people in. And that's when I would start off with the Maiden of Matsue bit. But yeah, then they're like, actually, maybe we'll just get you to roam for the beginning until it's time to send the first person on the break. Roaming just means wandering around the park, going up to people and scaring them and taking photos and all that kind of stuff. And that was so much fun. I mean, I was surprised. I was a little bit worried because I'm like, I'm just in a kimono with like scary makeup in the daylight, because, you know, it's not dark at 7 at the moment. Yeah, I was a bit like, in the daylight, am I gonna look scary enough? Is anyone gonna take me seriously? But I just made sure I kept on the character, like I had all that, and then had the eyes, like, you know, the way I'm looking at people, approaching people, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, and I had so much fun, and there were some people who were like, didn't want to come near me. They just like ran away. There was this one group of girls, and they were all like chatting and sort of looking at their phones in a circle. So what I did is I just came up to them, sort of inserted myself into the group without saying a word, and they thought they didn't notice, and the girl next to me just thought like her friend was getting a little bit too close, and then she turned around and saw it was me and jumped, and they were like, "Wah!" So that was heaps of fun. I kind of just did what I've seen, like, you know, I've been to Disneyland a long time ago when I was a kid and whatever, and just I remember some of those character actors in the suits, like there was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle who did some funny similar kinds of stuff, and so I was just like adapting that and things I know when I did Zombie Walk, how to freak people out just like in the street and whatever. Yeah, I had so much fun with that, and it was so surprising how many people would freak out just because, I don't know, I guess I was like, another thing that was tricky is like a lot of people dressed up for this event, so they looked scary too, and I'm like, how do I distinguish myself as someone who actually works here and is here to scare you instead of just a guest who's wandering around? And I'm really happy that I was able to get that across, like people actually knew I worked there. Yeah, and then I had fun with it, and they were freaking out, and you know, I had one mother take her kids away before I could get near them, and yeah, and then there was this one girl who had some chips, and so like I'm reaching out, freaking her out, and she ended up trying to offer me a chip, but I'm a ghost, so I didn't take it because, you know, ghosts don't eat. But I was like, give me your chips. I was actually silent while I was roaming. I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to scare people by walking up to them really creepy. And it worked. It was a lot of fun. And I think the rest of us, all the swing actors from all the mazes, we all had a lot of fun with that. So cool. I like roaming. Yeah, and so Thriller, with before that in the kimono was difficult. And actually with the other girl's kimono, that was another thing I did, is I helped her put on her kimono. Because I don't think the person who was in charge of costumes, like they had the kimono, they didn't know how to do it though. So I think the first night I wasn't there fast enough, so they just used pins to keep it on her, like, you know, in the right way. But yeah, on the later nights, I was like, I need you guys to get me some kind of belt or tie. I brought my own belt so that I could do my own kimono easily. But yeah, I got them to get like a thing to tie up, like the underneath bits. If you've ever seen a how to dress a kimono or yukata tutorial, you need like those extra tie bits that go under the obi. So yeah, I helped out with that. Another thing I did, I mean, these things weren't strictly part of my role, the helping out with costume. I also did some voice acting, and my mum did some voice acting too. So in Hanako-san's bathroom, there's actually like a lot of whispering, and it's like saying in Japanese, Hanako-san, are you there? Because that's part of the mythology, is like the kids go in and say, Hanako-san, are you there? And if she answers, you might die. So then we'd had the call, Hanako-san, are you there? Yes, I'm here. So, and we said that many different ways, and I recorded that, you know, I've got my gear, my studio gear, recorded it, sent it off to, you know, the creative director, and then we became voice actors. So anyone who came through Hanako-san's bathroom, you heard me and my mum whispering menacing things. And that was an interesting thing for me when I was in Hanako-san as well, when I was covering that break, because I could hear myself and my mum, and I'm like, it's the mum! And mum did really well. She's never done any kind of like acting, voice acting type stuff before, but she really put on the character, and I'm really proud of her for that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. What else? I think that's all for now because I'm running out of time. I was going to talk about like, okay, so just quickly, some of the other maze areas in Yokai, if you didn't get to experience yourself. I was hoping by now there'd be like a walkthrough, because I know people were filming them, but I haven't been able to find any. So if I do, I'll try and direct you to them. But so there was the host, then there was a Nopperabo, the faceless man. Then after that, Gasha Dokuro, the gigantic skeleton. Now obviously we don't have giants, but the guy who played the skeleton was amazing, like really like a sort of gymnast type guy, so was doing some crazy stuff there. Then they come through to the Matsue and the Okuri Inu, and then they go to Sadako, the ring room, which looked crazy the way they did that. I really hope there's footage because that was awesome. Then they would come through to Kuchisake Onna, then Hanako-san, and then Teke Teke chases them out through a train tunnel. It was intense, it was amazing, and like I can't wait to see what they do next year. I think they're gonna keep Yokai, but I think it's gonna be bigger and better, and just like if you're in Sydney, you have to try it. Because, you know, even when people show you walkthroughs, there was like the Today Show. Hang on, let me just pause because I'll be back in a moment. But yeah, so you have to experience the mazes in person, because I know the Today Show on Channel 9 or whatever, they did a walkthrough of the Outlaw one, and the problem with that though is they had like professional cameras going in there, so they had to set everything up, film a scene with everything lit up so you could actually see the host, because it's quite dark in some of them, and then, you know, move to the next thing, and apparently it took them quite a while to film it. And the problem with that is like you don't get the full experience of all the different scares, although I gotta say at the end of that Today Show bit, the final scare, the guy in the jail, he was amazing, his acting, I love it, it was so cool. But yeah, no, you have to experience it for yourself, because at the end of Halloscream, on the very final night, in the very last, like once all the guests had gone home, we got to go through each other's mazes, and it was just like, it was awesome. Ward 13, I think, yeah, that one was, they've had it previously, but this year is a lot scarier, and so that was a lot of fun to go through. And then Outlaw, I really liked some of the stuff they did in Outlaw. It really felt like a video game going through these other mazes. Because I think the Ward 13 had a bit of a Silent Hill vibe with the way the nurses were done, and then the Outlaw one, I don't really play video games, but like, you know, one of those kinds of, I guess, Outlaw style video games, because you're going through all these like different rooms, and then there's lighting, and like, you know, there was, my favorite part in that was maybe the outdoor area, and you go past an outhouse, like a little, you know, bathroom shed kind of thing, and the lady comes out and is like, you know, you got to get out of here kind of stuff, and then you see it, and oh my god, it was just crazy. I can't even describe everything, but like being in the maze was a completely different experience to when I watched it on TV with all the lights and stuff. Like, it's so much better going through when like everything is the way it's supposed to be, and the actors are amazing, and I'm just like, wow, I'm working with these people, that's awesome. And I also had fun scaring my fellow actors when they came through, because our breaks on the last night got a bit messed up, because yeah, one of the actors wasn't there and had to be fill in, and there was like some mix up about who was meant to be where. So by the time we finished, I didn't actually get my last break that day. I sent everyone on their breaks, but the girl who was playing Kuchisake was still on her break when we finished up. So I was still in the Kuchisake room when all the other actors came through, and so I had a lot of fun. They're like, they were expecting Kuchisake to come out. You know, oh, where is she? And then I come out. That freaked the shit out of them, because they weren't expecting it. They were expecting a completely different experience. So I had a lot of fun, like, you know, chasing them around. And actually, one of the things I like to do with Kuchisake is once I've chased them and they think they're safe, I would follow them around the corridor to the next room and like bang against the wall and just like be against the wall and like staring at them. And a lot of the time, because of there's a lot of sound effects, they wouldn't expect me to be there. They didn't even know I'd followed, and then I'd just appear and they'd be like, oh shit. And when I had some of the guests were like, oh shit, she's following us. Oh my god. So much fun. But yeah, no, so basically I got to do a whole lot of different things. Being a swing actor was amazing, and I think it really suited my personality, because like, I mean, I could have done any role and been quite happy, but this one I think really worked for me because I love variety. You know, in my regular life, I get bored if I'm doing the same thing too much. And then for me, this is my first time doing Halloscream and scare acting and all that kind of stuff. So I got to experience everything. I got to experience like talking to people with a lot of lines. I got to experience stretch wall. I got to experience Dropbox. I got to experience like coming out of places, chasing people around. I did roaming. I even got involved with costuming and voice acting. I got to do everything. So I had a fantastic time. Yeah, and I think I'll wrap it up there. I mean, I had some other stuff I could have talked about that was more about like how things went, but I think that's enough for now because this video is way too long. But I suppose before I go, I will address the Band-Aid, which, you know, yeah. So we've got 3 pugs. And I put it on my face because actually I've got a really bad slow grinding pimple that popped up here, and I was just like, It looks terrible. It's actually painful. There's nothing I can do to get rid of it because it's so far under the surface that you can't like pop it or anything. I've been putting cream on it, but I don't know how much is actually working. So I've just got to like, it's going to be there for a while and I've just got to wait for it to go. So I thought, well, I could go on YouTube with a gigantic pimple because I used to do that all the time. I had a face full of pimples and I'd just be on YouTube like, yeah, let's talk vampires. But I thought, no, I'm going to do something different. If I'm gonna have people staring at something weird on my face, it's gonna be something cute and unexplained and throw people off. So that is the story of a little band-aid on my face. I'm not becoming one of those decora chicks or whatever. I just was like, although I will say I was a little bit inspired by that. I was like, well, it's now a fashion style to put band-aids on your face. Why can't I do it? So there you go. That is all for now, I think. So, have fun with life and stuff, and if you've ever been thinking of scare acting, this is my experience and I had a fantastic time. It really suited me as a person, my personality, my interests, and I got to do everything. Yeah. I think that was how we will do it. I'm trying to be a little bit overly cheerful. Shall we be overly cheerful? Shall we be overly cheerful and fail to mention what this is? We'll just jump right into it and people could be like, what's that on your face there? Should I include this at the end? I don't know.